Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another episode here where I explore creative real estate ownership in the Bay Area. My name is Josh Silverman. I'm a real estate agent here in Berkeley, California at Kai Real Estate. And today's topic is one that I am super excited about. It's how I got into the market. It's the primary method that people describe as house hacking, which instead of buying a single family home, you're buying a multi-unit property. So today's topic is called Start Smart, Why Buying a Fourplex is the Perfect First Home. So I love this topic, and like I said, I did this for my first property. I bought a triplex, and it's changed my life. And so I'm a huge advocate of this strategy, and we'll get into why I love it so much. Couple of definitions here. What's a residential multi-unit property? Because I'm not talking about big buildings, I'm talking about 2-unit, 3-unit, and 4-unit buildings. So a duplex, 2 units, triplex, 3 units, fourplex, 4 units. 5 units, 5-unit building is considered a commercial property. It's totally different asset class. The lending is different attached to it. How it qualifies is different. Living in it is different. You can't get the loans that you can get in residential property. So I'm not talking about 5+ units. I'm really talking about a 4-unit building here. And triplexes too. Why a multi-unit residential property is best is because essentially you have access to the best of both worlds. And what I mean by that is you have access to, so the two worlds you're living in is an owner-occupant living in a unit. It's your home. It's where you want to live. It's how you want to live with the amenities that you want. And then on the commercial side, you're becoming a real estate investor, right? You're owning units. You are building out a portfolio. And so you get access to all the benefits in that world too. The brilliance here is being able to attach yourself to both of these worlds simultaneously. It's amazing kind of how this works. The primary benefit to, real estate investing in general, and the primary benefit here that you can attach to by buying a 4-unit building is you're unlocking the 4 ways to make money in real estate. There's 4 specific ways to make money in real estate: equity, appreciation, cash flow, and depreciation. Those are the 4 ways you make money in real estate. And that's for a 200-unit building and a 4-unit building. And so equity, what am I referring to when I say equity? So that's the amount, that's the value of the property itself minus the debt is how much of the building you own. That's your equity. When you buy a multi-unit building and when you buy a house, you're paying down your principal and interest every month through your mortgage payment. And as your principal goes down, your equity is going up, right? And so you are essentially paying yourself. So your equity increases every month, right? The amount of the property you own. So that's one way. Appreciation. The value of the property goes up over time. It appreciates. And so especially if you maintain it and improve it, it appreciates even faster, right? So that's the second way you make money in real estate. Cash flow. This is specifically when you have tenants, right? So cash flow refers to the amount of revenue you take in every month or every year via rent minus your expenses. Hopefully that is a positive cash flow and you're making money monthly with the property via cash flow, right? Third way. Fourth way, depreciation. Depreciation refers to, so like if you live in a fourplex, you occupy 1 unit, the 3 units that are left in the building get to get on a depreciation schedule. That just means you take those 3 units minus the value of the land, divided by 27.5 because it's depreciated over 27.5 years. And that amount every year is deducted from your income. And so you're paying less taxes. So it's a really advantageous tax deduction. So that's the 4 ways you make money in real estate. And so single family homes, and again, this presentation and this discussion is not to not down on single family home ownership. I own a single family home. I love them. They're great places to invest in and live in, and quality of life and all those things. It's just, when you're starting, it's just so nice to be able to jump into an investment that can last your whole lifetime, and also live in a place that you want to be in, right? So it's doing two things at once, whereas single family home is usually more, based on lifestyle, and there is value over time for sure, but not in the same way. So with a single family home, you tend to only unlock two ways to make money in real estate. And so that is the equity. As you're paying down your mortgage, your equity is going up, and appreciation. The value of the home goes up over time. So you have two kind of mechanisms there, and then in multi-unit you have four. And so I like to think of those four ways as like the four engines on a jetliner, right? And when that jetliner has all four engines going, it's full capacity, it's like flying through any kind of storm, it's doing whatever it wants to do, right? But sometimes those engines fail, or two engines fail, and a plane can actually fly on two engines. This is similar to what can happen in a multi-unit building. You can have a period of time where your cash flow is down. Maybe the rents are down. Maybe you're having trouble filling a unit. You can have a time where in the general economy, the appreciation is not there. So the value of the building backslides a little bit. At the same time, you're still making money via depreciation, and you're making money via equity if you're staying up on paying your loan down, right? So you have these two engines go down, two are still going, the plane is still flying, right? And so this is one of the really kind of interesting ways that you can weather downturns with a multi-unit property. And I've been through these downturns, and you just kind of, you find a way to survive, you hold the building, and you get through, and you get back to a position where all four are humming along. Like I said, my first property was a triplex. I paid about $745,000 for it in 2005. I've owned it for 19 years. I own 50% of it. I bought it with a buddy of mine. My down payment was around $37,000. I put in another $35K in improvements. So I was in for about $72,000 to own it. And I lived in the property for 12 years, for a little over 12 years. Why did I buy this property? When I had some money and I was ready to own, I looked at the single family market and I couldn't afford it. It just didn't, I may have been able to buy it, but then I wouldn't have been able to pay the monthly expenses. I wouldn't have been able to afford that. And so I looked at condos and I was like, I don't really want to buy a condo. And I started studying the math of these smaller buildings, and I was like, whoa, this makes sense. And I was business inclined and business minded, and so it resonated with me. And my buddy was in the same position. And so we were like, hey, let's just join forces. And you'll hear me talk about co-ownership, and this was co-ownership, right? This is buying with somebody you trust. And in my case, we're really good friends, which made it really fun and interesting. But we joined forces, we bought this property, and he lived in it for, 8 years or so, got married and left. I lived in it for 12 plus and then eventually got married and left. But it's really been like an amazing property for us, and it kind of changed my life in many ways, in terms of kind of the income it generates, and then also the community that was built around it too. And I'll get into that a little later. So why a fourplex and not a duplex? Duplex does work in this model as well, but a fourplex, what's interesting about a fourplex as opposed to a duplex is it's just a lower price per square foot. You're getting more buildings and more units at a lower rate. And so you're getting more bang for your buck. A duplex tends to hover, it's cheaper than a single family home, but it's the drop off is, maybe 20% less, let's say. But when you get down into a triplex, it drops even more, and then all the way down to a fourplex, it drops even another level down. And the reason being is because a duplex kind of feels more like a single family home. You don't feel like you're kind of in an apartment building, right? And a lot of people just say, oh, I don't want to, obviously in my first home, I don't want to feel like I've just left an apartment. I don't want to feel like I'm moving to an apartment, right? And so there's some pushback in that area. For me, I love that. I see that as like, I'm like, oh, that's value. I'm able to buy these units at a rate that just is so much better than the duplex market. And it becomes quite similar to even the 5-unit market. They start to impersonate the commercial market in terms of price per unit and price per square foot. And so the fourplex is really the sweet spot. Also, to have that many units, you tend to have more upside in rent, right? So one person moves out over time, the rents are going up, and you have that happening over 3 units. With 2 units, you have it happening over 1 unit or 2 units, right? So you have a higher upside potential. It's the same thing, what I was talking about with the 4 ways to make money in real estate. Also the diversification of the units, right? That you have more units. You could have one that's maybe in trouble or not renting as easily, or it's a studio and people don't want studios in that neighborhood all of a sudden or something. You still have the other 3 units to kind of support you to get through that period. So the fourplex is the sweet spot. So what I wanted to talk to you about is just an example of comparing a single family home to a fourplex. And I'm looking in a city called El Cerrito, California. Many of you know it. And there's 2 properties that I was kind of comparing side by side, and just to really illustrate the power of this kind of strategy. So I'll just jump into describing the basics on these properties. On the single family home side, there's a property, these are both real properties. I'm not using addresses. I'm rounding off numbers to just make it easier. I just really want you to take the concepts home. So the single family home sold for $1.1 million. It sold in mid-2024. The property was built in 1939, 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, 944 square feet, sitting on a 3,900 square foot lot. It's sold for $1,160 per square foot, which is a very high price per square foot. The fourplex sold for about $1.3 million. It sold in late 2023. It was built in 1960. All 4 units were 2 bedroom, 1 bath. The total building square footage is 3,055. It sits on a 5,700 square foot lot, and it sold for $419 per square foot. So this fourplex was 64% less price per square foot. So you're getting so much more building for the price, right? You're getting so much more real estate for the price, right? And it's only an uptick of $200K from the purchase price. Day 1 financial analysis. How do these 2 kind of compare, right? So we know one is 1.1, the other is 1.3. So in the single family home, you put a 20% down payment. You're in for about $220,000 down. You have your mortgage, your property tax, your insurance, your maintenance. Your total annual expenses are about $80,000 a year to own that house. Go over to the fourplex side. Again, you paid $1.3 million. Your down payment is 15%. And the reason I'm saying 15%, and this is one of the beauties of buying these properties in this residential space, is you can move your down payment around, right? You can do 15% down, 10% down, all the way down to 3% down for FHA, and you have all this flexibility on these 30-year mortgages, 30-year fixed rate mortgages, right? In this space, anything from single family up to 4 units, right? And so you can kind of move that around based on your needs at the time. And locking in a 30-year mortgage is amazing compared to like the commercial market, which tends to be 5-year loans, 7-year loans, up to 10-year loans, right? So it's 30-year fixed. So anyway, to kind of compare apples to apples here, we're doing a 15% down payment on the fourplex. It's $200K down, so similar down payment. Again, your property tax, your insurance, your maintenance, all these things, you're roughly at $103,000 per year in expenses, right? So that strikes you as, you're like, well, this is gonna cost me $23K extra per year to own that building. Where's the good news, Josh? The good news comes in when you calculate the rent, right, on the other 3 units. So I didn't calculate the rent yet. And so again, to own that single family home, you're at about $6,500 a month. When you go over to the fourplex side, you're at $8,600 a month in expenses, but you're taking in about $5,000 a month in rent, right? So when this building was purchased, there was a unit making $1,400 a month, $1,500 a month, and $2,000 a month, right? And then you're moving into one of the other units. So your total monthly cost to own the fourplex is $3,600, whereas the single family home is at $6,500. So the monthly savings to live in the fourplex is $2,900 a month. So it's significant. So that's a big chunk. That's kind of life-changing money. And so out of the kind of gate here, yeah, your down payment is similar, but your monthly is almost $3,000 less to own the fourplex. So that's your cash flow side, you know, in terms of I think about that as kind of your cash flow gain, is that the tenants are essentially offsetting your costs significantly, right? So that's one big benefit, right? Your monthly costs are a lot lower. Then I wanted to talk about, you're not going to want to live in this fourplex most likely for the rest of your life. Things will change over time, and you know, kind of a rule of thumb is I tend to think you should own in order to kind of get the value out of real estate, you tend to need to own it for at least 5 years. But even like at the 10-year point, it starts to get really interesting. I did a 10-year financial analysis on kind of projecting what's going to happen with these two properties, right? And because that 10-year point is when you're often like, for the single family, you may be outgrowing it, may have kids, may just want to live in a different neighborhood, move out of state, whatever it is. With the fourplex, same thing. You know, you may outgrow it, whatever your life circumstances have changed, right? So you want to leave, right? I did a kind of, I thought about over the last 10 years in El Cerrito, single family homes appreciated by 68%. So there's a 6.8% annual appreciation on single family homes in El Cerrito over the last 10 years. So this puts the projected sale price in 2034 at 1.8 million. Less debt, $700K, because your debt has gone down. You've paid it down over years. Your total equity is about 1.1 million, okay? So remember, you put in around 200K, now it's worth 1.1 million in equity. That's a very successful investment. It does great, right? Fourplex, over the last 10 years, multifamily actually in El Cerrito appreciated even faster than single family, which is kind of rare. Usually single family moves faster than multifamily, but multifamily had a ways to go. So it was 78% appreciation over 10 years, 7.8% annual appreciation for multifamily. So that puts the projected sale price in 2034 at 2.3 million. Less your debt, your total equity is 1.4 million. Now, again, total equity on single family, 1.1 million. Total equity on the multifamily, 1.4 million. So from an equity standpoint, the fourplex beat the single family by 300K, right? So that's another benefit, is like these things, because you've bought more real estate and because there's more kind of, there's more chance for growth, and then it actually did grow faster in terms of the annual appreciation. You just get that bigger bump in overall equity. And so that's a benefit too, right? And what I'm going to explain here is the goal here is to have you keep this fourplex, actually, to not sell it. I'm going to kind of talk to you a little bit about why I think it's advantageous to hold it forever and not sell it, and the difference between holding a house and holding a fourplex is significant. At the 10-year point, you decide to sell, this is kind of, again, these are not negatives, but there is kind of a bit of a trap in the single family space, and this is, again, not a significant trap. It's an okay thing to do, but compared to the fourplex, I'll kind of explain. So, you have that single family house, so you're going to sell, you're going to trade up. So you're going to sell it for 1.8. Usually going to want something better or bigger. So you go out and buy a house for 2.5 million. You put that 1.1 million in equity into the house as your down payment, which is like a 45% down payment. Again, all your expenses, and your total monthly cost to own is $11,000 per month. Now remember, we were close to $7,000 per month before when you first bought your house, right? And you just got a much nicer house. It's a bigger house. It's more comfortable for you. It's great, different neighborhood. All those things are wonderful. It's a win, but it is $4,000 more per month, right? And so this is, I'm kind of introducing the concept of the debt treadmill, right? Is that you keep going up and up and up. It's great, but it's also you're more bound to, you're kind of required to generate a lot of income to support that debt moving forward indefinitely. With the fourplex, I'm trying to kind of get you out of that treadmill to a certain degree, right? I'm trying to get you to have more freedom and more flexibility and less stress, right? A phrase I always use with my clients is, I want you owning the house. I don't want the house owning you, right? And so this $11K per month may be completely fine. You're making tons of money, everything's great, whatever, but it may not be, right? It may be a source of stress. That's why there's kind of like some caution in there for that. So that's what happens when you kind of sell and trade up, which is, fine. And then let's say, and for the fourplex, before I move on, for the fourplex, you can do the same thing. You can sell it and trade up also, right? You can sell it and you can move to another town. You can take that 1.4 million in equity you had and do whatever you want with it, right? Downsize, upsize, whatever you want, right? So that is an option, and that's a fine option. Plenty of people want to get out of that space and I didn't like being a landlord, whatever it is. Sometimes you need to tap that equity in order to buy your next thing. And so that's also a very real thing. And that's kind of the trick here is I really, over the 10 years of owning the fourplex, the kind of goal is, and this is kind of what I did, is that you want to be saving up money along the way. You're saving that money. Remember, you're saving around $33,000 a month living in the fourplex. You're wanting to kind of save some of that money to get you ready to buy your next thing, because you want to hold that fourplex, right? Now you're in a position, let's say, this is another option here is holding both properties, right? And I'm going to get into, we talked about selling both properties. Now we're going to talk about holding both properties, right? So holding single-family homes in the Bay Area is very difficult because the monthly cost of ownership is so high, right? And so you're in for, like I say, close to $7,000 a month to own that single-family house. The rent that I'm projecting, or actually, let's call it $6,500 to own that single-family house. The rent that I'm projecting in 10 years is roughly about $4,500 to rent that home. So what does that mean? Your cost to own, $6,500 per month, monthly rent, $4,500. You are cash flow negative. That is where we don't want to be as investors, right? That's the kiss of death. What happens is a lot of people say, oh, I want to just hold, I'll live in this house for a while and then I'll rent it. And sometimes that works. If your down payment is low enough, it works a lot better in different states actually, when your purchase price is $500K, $400K. But here, because of these high purchase prices, they often they're just cash flow negative. And so you face that and you're like, well, I can't lose $2,000 a month just to hold this thing, I have to sell it, right? Move over to the fourplex, you absolutely have the option to rent it out, to move out of your unit, rent it, and make money. Looking at, at that 10-year point, I did some projections and came up with some numbers here that I'll kind of explain. So you're living in your unit, you've improved it, it's beautiful, you move out, somebody moves into your unit, now all four are generating income. It's purely an investment property, right? You're not living there anymore, but you still have your 30-year mortgage. You can hold on to that. So total annual expenses to own the building, your expenses have gone up. It's around $105,000, which comes out to about $8,900 a month to own the fourplex. Your rents have gone up over that 10-year period of time. I did some projections based on historical data, but roughly rents were going up about 4.4% over the last 10 years annually. And so your rents have all kind of jumped during that period of time. And to the point that annually you're making $160,000 per year in rent, and your gross monthly rent is $13,500. That's a big number, right? Again, back to your monthly expenses, $8,900, your gross monthly rent, $13,500. You are making, cash flowing, $4,600 a month, which for me is major, right? That is, you know, you have to ask yourself, what would you do with this amount of money every month? As a relatively passive investment, not fully passive. You're dealing with tenants, you're dealing with maintenance, you're dealing with all kinds of stuff. But it's, the beauty of these things is it kind of does its thing on its own as long as you keep up your maintenance. As an investor looking at that $4,600 a month, what does that represent? Now remember, we put in about $200K to purchase the building, a little bit more, 220 or something like that. And obviously we put in more money to maintain the building, and there's, you know, we replaced a roof during that time and those things. But $4,600 a month represents an annual cash-on-cash return of 31%. So based on kind of your down payment and your maintenance and what you've invested in the building over those 10 years, it's roughly coming out to, and that return is roughly representing 31% annual return, which is outstanding. It's just absolute home run, right? You would take a 31% return anytime. That's the beauty of this. One thing you can do, if you want to hold, and you decide, okay, I'm gonna hold the fourplex, but I do need a little bit of money to pull out of it in order to buy my next thing, right? There are things you can do. You can get a home equity line of credit on it and pull out some cash that way. And you can also refinance. You can do a cash out refi on the fourplex. Let's say at year 8, prior to moving out, you want to pull out 100K or 125K out of that loan. You have so much, your rent is so strong here, you can support that. And you can project when you're going to move out, can I support that additional debt? And hopefully the interest rate is lower and it kind of pays for itself, and you should be fine. So you have those levers too that force you not to sell the building, because that's what you don't want to sell. You want to keep the real estate. That's the big thing. That's kind of the story financially of why these things are such a big deal. And so now, you know, in my situation, having owned a building like this for 19 years, they do get better over time, right? Because your costs tend to stabilize, your debt cost is fixed, right? And rents slowly go up over time, right? So you should be doing better and better and better. So that's the kind of the financial story, and it's pretty amazing. You know, like I said, the finances. It for me, what is this money represented? I have kids now. Represents summer camp. It represents some trips. It represents less stress. So if I don't need to work as much, if I'm feeling like I need a break, I have additional income coming in, right? So this you know, it really is kind of life-changing money in some ways. Let's talk quickly about the kind of the more real side of living in a fourplex and being a landlord, which are not ideal for some people, right? What's the downside of this plan? Some people would say, well, I don't want to live in an apartment building, right? I've lived in an apartment all my life and I'm living in an apartment building now. Fair, completely fair. I would say there's different configurations. There's like one unit in the back sometimes and a triplex in the front, or there's two nice duplexes side by side, or there's different ways you can kind of offset that feel, but some of them are, yes, 2 units up top, 2 units on the bottom, and it feels like a small apartment building. Some people aren't into that. The learning curve of being a landlord, it's a thing. Being a landlord is very serious. There's laws related to safety and habitability. You have to take care of your building, take care of your tenants. You have to understand the laws. You have to understand how to take a rent increase, how to, write a good lease, how to deal with disputes. It's a process. It's a real job, and it's not rocket science. And you can learn all these things, but they do take time and patience, right? Third, there's no guarantees, right? This is risky. This is an investment like any other investment. I'd say risk is relatively low compared to a lot of investments, especially in the Bay Area. Real estate just tends to be solid, right? But nothing's guaranteed. Rents could go down. You could have maintenance issues that you didn't see coming, and they could be problematic, to say the least. So that's kind of like, so some people are like, oh, I don't want to deal. I don't want to be a landlord. Don't think of themselves as a landlord. My counter to that, and this is kind of on the positive side, is when I lived in a building that I owned, right? Yes, I was the landlord, but ultimately people are concerned about their own lives. They have their own jobs and their own stresses and their own concerns. And I was just another person that lived in the building. And ultimately, we created community, and we built friendships, and we looked out for each other. And it wasn't like, my landlord is this, it was just, I was just Josh, right? And to the point that I'm friends with some of them still to this day. 2 of them were at my wedding. It's an opportunity in many ways to have this kind of tight community that I think people underestimate, right? They see it as, well, I'm just gonna always be on site, and they're always gonna be asking me for something and this and that. And that's just not the way it ever was for me in 12 years, right? It was just, yes, I had to repair things occasionally. And then once we're done repairing things, it's like, how's your job? How's your life? How's your boyfriend? How's this? So that was really special. And I think you don't get that necessarily in a single family home. I grew my network. I'm hiring vendors all the time, right? And I'm hiring folks, and I got to know pest treatment companies and architects and floor folks and plumbers and electricians, and like a lot of them are really cool and have great stories, and like they've enriched my life, right? They're friends. Some are good, some aren't so good, some come once and you'll never see them again, and some I still work with to this day, after many, many years, right? It's just, this kind of slow process of like kind of building this thing where people live in and have their lives and share experiences, and like this is a people business. First and foremost, it's a service-oriented business. You are providing housing for folks. But if you do it right, people appreciate it. They respond accordingly, right? And there's this like genuine warmth that folks share with you, and that I share with them. And so anyway, I don't want to kind of overdo it, but it's special. It's special. A couple of the quick takeaways. This is a long-term strategy. This is not a get-rich-quick scheme. This takes years and years and years of kind of attention and patience, but it really pays off, and it gets better and better over time. Buying a property like this, so I plan to own my triplex. I plan to give it to my kids, and it could have implications and benefits for them for many, many years to come, right? Anyway, this is long-term, it's not short-term. It's not for everybody, but it's a really nice way to get into the market. And first steps, if you're interested in this, is talking to an agent. I'm obviously available. I love this stuff. I've walked so many buildings, I can kind of feel them and know if they're going to perform well, or if there's some pitfalls built into them, or if there's issues that are going to bite you in the long run. But yeah, let's get in and talk about it and run some numbers and look at your, what you qualify for a single family home is different than what you qualify for a multifamily property, right? The rent is additional income, so you can buy more building actually than you can from a price standpoint from a single family home, right? So there's all these things. It's complicated, really interesting and fun. Give me a call. If you like this video, please like it and subscribe. And this is a great house hack, and I enjoy talking to you about it. Have a good one.